Okay, let's continue with the Triumph and Glory series. Now, only 2 boxed games, as far as I know, came out for it. This one's Borodino, somewhat more recent, 2004. I doubt that there will be anything else directly under this series because it kind of took off under, I think, the Jeux de Gloire. As I butcher that, which is largely published by European companies. I think it's all under, I can't speak to it. But anyway, it's a very similar system, which I have none of. So, in Borodino, there are some serious changes to the rules. At least one major one. They claim 2, but I think most of that's actually covered in the 2.0 rules. This is the 2.2 rules, I think. Or maybe the others were 1.2. I don't know. But there was an update for the Triumph and Glory, which I have up there. And I played a bunch of scenarios for that. By the way, I'm back on my old camera. I know some of you liked the new one better. I'm so used to this. I want to work with this one if I can. I was just having so much trouble with it. If I have to switch, I have to switch, but right now it's being at least as good as the new one from my point of view. My zoom is not as good, but I'm better capable of turning it on and off and stuff like that, and keeping the lens covered. There's 2 scenarios in the in the Borodino game. The first one is this Scavardino Redoubt, and then the other one's Borodino itself, and those sound like very Italian names, but it's in Russia. This is the battle from Moscow. There was a fallback plan, but Kutuzov decided not to take it. Anyway, what's happened here, we're going to be doing the Scavardino Redoubt, just a couple days before the battle. The Russians are holding a position back here. We're not going to worry about that right now, because we're just worried about this one redoubt, which was a little too far forward, but the Russians decided to hold it as kind of a breakwater or something like that to attract some attention by the French. They would have to take it out and it would slow them down, and maybe reinforcements or something would come. So that's about all we have for that. It's not going to use all the rules, so I'm going to go over the differences, though, very briefly. Some of the differences you're going to see are things that I just failed to incorporate. Back when I played Triumph and Glory, I kind of played a cross between the 1.0 and 2.0 rules, and I didn't take anything directly from here. So most of it's the same. There's a few clarifications, a few little fixes. One of the fixes came in the 2.0 that was really important. It had to do with how Cav operate. And it claims here that this is the rule book that changes that, but I think it was mainly changing in 2.0. Basically, I was running all over the place with my Cav and launching attacks. They can't do that. They can run in and engage an enemy, but they can't attack at the turn they engage, or they can charge. And charging is the only way that they'll get the pursuit, which allows them to roll through an entire line. But the problem with charging is that it's going to disorder them automatically when they're done with it. They also changed some of the countercharge rules for Cav, I think, or I played them a little differently. A few other things I noticed that I've been playing wrong that I don't really want to go too much into. But the big difference here is in the rally and recovery rules. So instead of having the units on the map after routing and running away, what's going to happen is they're going to go into this withdrawn box, and then at the end of the turn, at the end of the turn, first you deal with the recovery box, and then the withdrawn box drops into the recovery box. From the recovery box, you make a morale check against the disordered unit's morale. If it succeeds, it's going to come back on the map within 3 hexes of its formation, but not within 3 hexes of an enemy unit. And if you can't manage that, well, you rolled for no reason, basically. If it fails, though, it goes into the permanently eliminated box. So you don't have to worry about units on the board routing. Personally, I rather like units on the board routing, but I want to play this as it's intended. I'm also going to play with the Cav as they're intended because although the rules from the original didn't hurt my Austerlitz experience much, in Wagram I felt like the Cav had just gotten way too potent in terms of being able to encircle the enemy, etc. There were other problems with my playthrough of Wagram, which is really a pity because that was one of the things I really wanted to see play out well. So that's essentially the only difference that you're going to see. So I'm not going to do a whole intro to this. I might do a review of it, or I might just cover it in the individual wraps. I haven't decided yet. Depends on how important it is. But most of the rest of it's the same. The combat charts are the same. The game comes with some neat little counters for it. So, for example, the fired markers for the artillery now specify half movement. That was in the original rules, but because it wasn't on the counter, I didn't really think about it, and I just ended up rolling my guns around a little too fast. We have these activation collapsed markers, which I found other things to serve for that. The Cav charges have changed their appearance. Reinforcements, there's one that's one of the little reminders I have, and I'm probably going to screw up things in the rules. That's no big shock with me, especially since I'm familiar with playing it under the other rules, or at least my version of them. Reinforcements can only come in on their first chit using the extended movement for reinforcements, and something that I lost that I thought I had seen but couldn't find in the other rules, but now found definitively in these, they have to stay on the road if they're going to do that. So you have a big column marching in instead of like this mass that I had moving across the board. Extended movement in general can be that mass. I think I need some of these bridge markers, these busted bridges for this scenario. The only bridge is at 3813. Would be this one. So we'll put a couple busted bridges along here just as reminders that those aren't going to be usable. I don't know quite what that all is going to work. So the special rule in this scenario is, and there's some kind of annoying things that were clarified, like stacking. I don't even remember what it was. Like artillery can only stack with infantry if the two infantry are from the same brigade, and stuff like that, which really leads you to keep your units together, but it can be a bit, and keeps you from kind of trying to optimize how strong your units are. It makes them more spreading them out, and that's historically more accurate, but it might end up being a pain in the ass. Now, to begin with, I've stacked everything together, and I'm going to try to keep them together, but I make no guarantees that I can. So we're not going to be playing with the activation markers or anything like that in this one. There's no chit pull in this scenario. In Borodino, in the big battle, it's going to go with the chit pull and the basic rules there. But in this battle, it's going to be a straight I go, you go. But not all the French units start active. Only this command here, which is Compan's division of the 1st Corps. The other divisions that are on the board and the reinforcements can be entered one per turn. They get activated one per turn, and there's no real counters to support marking these. One thing they did was they got rid of all the route markers, so that there's room for, some of these additional counters that were added to the mix, which I guess is cool. So each turn the French get to pick another unit that they can throw into the battle. For the Russians, all the units are going to be active, with the exception of the 2nd Grenadiers and the 8th Corps Infantry. Here's the 2nd Grenadiers, and I don't know where the 8th Corps Infantry is. Let's see if I missed something. 3807 to 08.
has some. Oh, that's these guys. Okay, so those are not active. And they're not active until turn 2. The French aren't allowed to move east of 3600, which is this row here. And if they're forced to retreat across it or something, they're eliminated. The Russians can't enter 4400 until the French 5th Corps arrives. And the 5th Corps is limited. I can't activate it until the 3rd turn to come in. The goal of the game is over 5 turns. Whoever owns this at the end of the 5 turns wins. The terrain, got a more readable terrain chart, a little bit. And then we got this. So these are streams, I think. This is the river. Okay. Although this is called a river, it is a stream. And it looks like a normal stream. No, it's a banked stream. Okay, so that's going to be an effect here. And you can see that it's got some movement effects and a shock effect. And the shock effect negates the clear terrain bonus for the defender, or penalty for the defender. Bonus, yeah. Anything else interesting here? What about the redoubt itself? The redoubt is kind of expensive to move into. Cav and artillery can't move into it, but there's an asterisk. No. It starts with an artillery in it, though. And that also has an effect on both fire and shock. And that's about it. There's not a lot of complexity to this. And we'll get to the Battle of Borodino, the main battle, later. I thought this was just going to be kind of a learning scenario within the Battle of Borodino, in which case I wouldn't have done it at all. Luckily, it is actually a prequel to the battle. All right, let's go forward. Okay, so I started moving, activated the French cav to push around to this side because I was thinking I'll do a flanking attack, but then I realized, wow, this Russian artillery, if I can do a head-on attack against, say, just 3 of the 3 units, or even 4 units, whatever I do, if I can succeed in getting an attack off against the artillery, I take the place. Of course, it might stop me, but it seems like a worthy risk. At any other point, someone might throw some infantry into there. And that's the setup. I have nothing to do about that. Then I noticed, hey, what's this little dashed thing here? So I look over here, and it is a ford. An interesting way of showing it. I'm not used to that, but okay. And I look over on the terrain chart, and that is a stream it's crossing, which costs +1 for artillery. The ford costs more for everyone. I don't know. I really have no idea why that's there at all. Oh no, that's more than a stream. That is a banked stream, or a deep banked stream. That's a banked stream, which is about the same as the ford. Whatever. And, well, I'm being more careful checking the rules on everything to make sure I've gotten some things correctly. And I do seem to have gotten, like, the artillery can advance with the infantry because it's the whole stack that advances. We had these guys smashed through and forced them into the withdrawal box with double attack, basically. They attacked once and attacked again. These guys pushed forward. But the guys I wanted to go into the redoubt did not. They refused to enter. They didn't get a chance to even get shot at. Now, we do just like any I go, you go, we flip the turn marker, and the Russians get their opportunity to go. Okay, so during the Russian turn, I can't move these guys. I jumped into the redoubt. That's all one regiment, so it can stack there. Shifted the cav up here. Now, under the rules I was playing the old Triumph and Glory games with, or whatever, this guy can't get anywhere. All these cav would have really demolished this French command here. They would have just swung around and hit it in normal melee. I'm not able to do that anymore. So instead, you see I've got these charge markers, and since I've never really looked at a charge too much, I'm going to make some quick rolls there. I can do this because the bank stream only adds 1 for Cav. And I make some morale checks as I declare my charges. I'm going to have these 2 charging into here, I guess. Actually, I gotta look. I'm allowed to turn 1 hex side during the charge each time, if I recall correctly. But this could have changed. I don't think I have to line it up completely. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. I can't find it in there. So I make checks. The tactical quality is the number in the square in this game. Let's see what we got here. Got a 5 on the first one. Okay, so he's not going in. He's not going in. Okay, so I got 1 charge going in. I'm allowed to peek. I'm looking at 8 strength points. Hitting 12. I get some fire. I don't know whether I want to take it or form square. Forming square, something I never did before. Again, because Cav was just too damn useful. I have to make a check to do it. I got a chance of just disordering. I'm just going to take it. I think it's safer. So let's stream this Cav in here. And we got 8 strength points, but I get an artillery fire first. So I get a 3-4 fire for the mass target. 9, that's a possible hit. It only hits the top unit. That was one clarification I have. But that's enough to stop the command. It does not stop them. So now it's 8 to 12. That's a 2 to 3 type situation. So it's -1, +2 for the charge, except they're light cav. I know light cav only, I think, generates a +1 to the charge. Again, it's hard to find everything. It's in the combat table. Yeah, light cav charging is only +1. So we're at even. And we get a 9 that's going to disorder the defense. And then they make a cohesion check for retreat. And from the other game, from a scenario, those cohesion checks... See, here it says, yeah, each affected unit very clearly. Okay, so from the top is blue 9. He is going to withdraw... This guy should be flipped. A 0 holds him. And the artillery is going to be destroyed. Now, this is retreat cohesion, not a withdrawal check. So these 2 fall back. And we'll send them back across the stream. I don't know if there's much more. No, there's no more that the Russians can do. Because everything's together. So we push into the second turn. And now on the Russian side of the second turn, they're going to get to activate these. I maybe could have attacked with these because They are adjacent, but they're not active. But I'd rather not. I'd rather have the French pinned there until I can get some force into play against them. Because I'm kind of outnumbered. And it just doesn't look good. All right, French side of the turn. Another division in play from the first corps. Moron, I think. And I moved the cav up to engage but not to attack. They're allowed to move next to the enemy, but they can't do a shock attack if they do that. But that gives me a position where I'm putting pressure on them. And this is how cav is going to be working, is I can do those big outflanks and stuff, I just won't get the die roll to actually destroy the enemy unit. The enemy gets a chance to try to fall back from the cav continuously. So if I'm not in charge range to begin the turn, the cav serves more as a threat than as an actual just continuous assault ability. That's going to be really interesting, and I think I'm going to really like the way that works. French made an attack against these. These guys are actually better. I thought they were militia or something because they're so big. They're actually pretty solid units. And I was going in at even, which isn't very wise. This guy blasted another unit. I forgot to move this guy to the recovery box last turn. Got to get used to the pacing of that. And now we're on the Russians again. This is such a small battle. I'm going to show the Russian counterattacks here. You can see I'm back to using these little command markers to mark, hey, I get to rally this unit. Without that marker, you never know what you've withdrawn. For example, these guys backed up a hex, so they wouldn't be allowed to rally. I guess I could roll before, but then I'd get confused as to what I can move. I've got one cav charge. These guys aren't trying to attack. These guys aren't trying to attack. I'm just trying to hold this space, remember? So I don't really need to cause a lot of casualties. The less casualties I cause, the better. Not so much against the French, but I want to make sure I don't cause many against me. But I do want to make this attack here with these heavies, or heavy infantry. And they're going to get to make their attack. I don't have to worry about the +1 over here because I'm not in a frontal hex. And then the charge, same thing, I don't have to worry about fire, but I don't think I'm making it on a 6. And now here I'm 10 to 12, and there's artillery under there, but again I don't have to worry about it because I'm hitting from the flank. 10 to 12 means I'm at -1, but I get +2 for positional advantage. So I end up just at a +1. I can pull this over here. I get a 3, which is no good. I'm disordered, and I make a quick retreat check, which I fail, and I drop back, I guess, to there. I could go here. I'm not sure about the geometry that I want to deal with. I think I actually want to retreat to here because this guy, basically the French have to be in 2 hexes to prevent me from rallying both of those. Over here I've got somebody in the recovery box. Oh, let me check these guys. There's 2 units. I'll do blue on top because I like blue. 8 and 6. Neither one's going to rally. Nothing bad happens to them though. Only bad things happen here where I have a 3 and I come back on the map and this guy drops down. Now this guy is, well, his command is gone. So he's part of this west. 1, 2. I can show up back here, I guess. I can't show up within 3 of a French unit. So that'll help a little bit. And that should be it for turn 2. Now turn 3 I can activate the French 5th Corps and bring that in. Okay, and as with the old camera, it fails to charge. No biggie for this game, but it's a war game. I spend a lot of time away. Over here, 5th Corps is coming on now. That's my reinforcement for the turn. First turn I could get it. The Cav punched some of the Russian Cav back. Attack here. I had it surrounded, risking this guy's rear to the Russians. And nobody wanted to attack except this poor fella. And he ended up getting repulsed. Whereas over here we had kind of a successful attack, some successful artillery fire. You can see knocked some guys into the withdrawal box for the turn. So they'll get to rally this turn. I'll say one thing you can really tell. This game would not be very pleasant with the recovery methods that it uses if it was a straight I go, you go game. This particular scenario is, hey, there aren't a whole hell of a lot of pieces on the board, but I'm thinking some of the bigger battles, if they were done straight I go, you go, I don't know if it would terribly affect. I mean, I'm not too impressed with the I go, you go in terms of how it affects command and control, the chip pull in terms of how it really affects command and control, etc. What it comes down to is, okay, you could do the same with an initiative roll in an I go, you go game, except it localizes the effects and it can cause some traffic jams and stuff like that. But it doesn't terribly feel like it's more realistic. The command rules that prevent units from engaging quite as much, I think, do a little bit more towards that. But it does reduce the amount of effort you have to put in. And it also makes coordination impossible. You have to use those special chits for combined activities to coordinate units. And I don't think there are any in the Borodino scenario. There certainly aren't any in this one. All right, on to the Russian side. And the Russians kind of pull back a little bit here, do some recovery actions on some of them. An attack here, which disrupts this kind of flank attack. The French are on a tight timeline here. They only have this turn and one more, and then it's over. And of course, if they do take it, the Russians have a chance to retake because the French go first. So, but we have almost all the French units in line. I think this is the only command, and these artillery are part of it, that I haven't engaged. And they're just cav. They're not going to do much. French ended up in a little bit of a cluster trying to do multiple cav charges from here and here. These guys didn't go, so these guys couldn't. Actually, 1, 2. Yeah, these guys were heading there. These guys were heading there. This guy did make his charge, and he slammed those infantry. I don't know why I chose not to try to go into square. That was kind of dumb. Yeah, it doesn't make too much difference. And then over here, we only got an attack from this unit into the key victory point hex here. The infantry that tried to go in the village was repulsed. There's some interesting terrain effects on this, which we'll see in the other scenario as well. Woods, and I think we saw this in one of the other Triumph and Glory, and strangely enough, villages, which I guess means that the villages here are wooden buildings, and that thought is going into mind, give a bonus to the attacker firing artillery into them. They still give a defensive bonus against shock combat, which includes regular musket fire and everything. And I explained why this makes sense. When you fire artillery into a wooded structure or trees or something, you cause splinter and shrapnel and all kind of crap to go flying around. But it's kind of strange how different scenarios make that choice. And it would also apply to some extent, I think, to stone structures, but they have a little bit more resilience and aren't likely to be turned into weapons as easily. But it's an interesting concept. I don't know, given how heavily certain places like the Hougoumont were used as defensive positioning, it seems a little strange that, and granted, that's a stone building, heavily built, but I'm not sure how much villages were eschewed in terms of a defensive positioning because of artillery, the danger of artillery. But here, you really don't want to be sitting in them if you're facing artillery fire, and you're almost assuredly facing artillery. I think I mentioned before in the earlier games, I kind of allowed the artillery to
coordinate better than it should have been allowed to. I think the first game, maybe the second game even that I played of the Triumph and Glory, I played correctly, and then I started remembering this rule where you can add more artillery in. Well, you can only do that if they're stacked together, and that pretty much means they're not stacked with anything else, where they add the +2 per. So, for example, at Wagram, I had a whole line of artillery just firing straight into both the Austrian and the French side, just counter, battery fire going in both directions. But the French had more artillery, so it probably helped them a little bit in terms of loosening that line up a little and weakening the defensive position. Because an artillery unit is supposed to only fire on its own unless it's stacked together. And that means you're really unlikely to get a very big result. When you use the artillery fire, you need at least a 9 to cause a disorder check. But against good troops, that's not going to do much. You need a 13 to disorder them completely, automatically. And you need a 15 to push them out of the hex. By coordinating a bunch of artillery, you can get that 13 pretty easily. I think that scenario did not allow for massed artillery battalions. Borodino is going to allow for them, where there's going to be a chit that allows you to really degrade the defender's position, or the attacker for that matter, with massed artillery fire. But I don't know. There may be special rules affecting to what extent you can actually use that. But it definitely affected my Wagram scenario. And again, along with maybe misinterpreting Charles and misplaying the cavalry, made it a much, much easier scenario for the French to just roll up the Austrian line. Russians, they get almost nothing done. Some rally attempts, pulled their guns back after trying to bombard back here. This unit was adjacent and could have been in the way but wasn't, because I was firing from here. This unit was in the way but not adjacent, so it's no big deal. There's no friendly fire possibility, so I can bombard those hexes. And I actually do have coordinated fire there. It looks pretty hopeless for the French right now, because everything's disordered back here. And I'm not going to be able to get these into line. The Cav probably isn't going to be able to take it. I've got to do it this round. If I don't take it this turn, the game's over and I lose. This is a defensive position that was meant to slow the French down, and it's done that. Or it looks like it will. Remember, this isn't... oh, I forgot to roll for these guys. Let's do them quickly. 1, yeah, he doesn't have any morale. Oh no, he succeeded. Hold on. It's him that failed. I failed. He was a 1. Okay. It doesn't... It's not really meant to provide you with a challenging scenario or a particularly interesting one. I think Castiglione does a better job of giving you an interesting scenario, but it's not really a great intro scenario, even though there's a few pieces on the board. You're so busy kind of puzzling things out. The problem with this one, of course, is it doesn't use all of the rules. It'd be kind of neat if it used the pulse movement and stuff like that. But this at least gets you the core mechanisms outside of the command, and then you got to go to the bigger scenario to see the command rules. So I don't know. I'm not sure which way to put it. I find this one actually more interesting because it's not, it's not as gamey as the Castiglione one. It's just a simple, hey, go take this hex, do it. It feels like a squad leader scenario. French are set up making a whole bunch of attacks, but none of them matter except for this one here, and then a potential cav charge coming in there. But there's big penalties for cav charge into a redoubt. So let's just take care of those, and we'll call it after that and not actually handle the others. They're not going to have any effect. So this is a 7-pointer trying to go in. If I get those, I have to make the other attacks too, because it's not... The game's not over with the French turn. The Russians get a chance to retake it if that's the case, but I don't have to worry if they don't. So they're not going in, and let's see the cav charge. There should be some
I can't try to form square because I'm disordered. But the cav's not going in. So there's no way the French can win this battle. Back to using these little markers. I had to dig them out from the rest of the game. In order to indicate, hey, rally attempts. I'm not going to worry about the rest of it. The French are going to do a pretty good job on some of these units. Some of them maybe not so much, but I've got some big attacks coming in. I just don't feel like this is too minor a scenario. So now I have to set up the big one, and you can see I got a couple of counter trays. There's a lot of counters in this, probably at least as many, about as many as in Wagram, but less map than the other big battle, and obviously you just get one scenario in this, really, and then this tiny little learning scenario. All right, let's send this one up, and I'll start setting that thing up.